Insomniac Games is putting Miles Morales center stage in the next Spider-Man game, and we have Square Enix dropping the Avengers game this fall. With all the hype surrounding these titles, I want to look back and share with you guys what I think are the greatest comic book video games of all time. Remember, these are my opinions and are not a definitive list. And since I'm only mentioning 10 games, there are definitely some really good games that I had to cut. Just gonna warn you right now, X-Men the arcade game is not on this list. Also, I have not played every single comic book game ever made, so your top choice might not even be on this list. With all that out of the way, let's jump right into my top 10 comic book video games of all time. Number 10, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is the best entry in that series. The original MVC3 released back in 2011 in the PS3 360 era, and it was great then. But the definitive Ultimate version they brought to modern consoles, adding 12 new characters, including favorites like Doctor Strange, Rocket Raccoon, and Phoenix Wright, really put the cherry on top. I really enjoyed the idea of putting 3 fighters on your team instead of just being locked into one. It added an extra element to strategy, in addition to allowing you to make teams of heroes that might not normally join forces. It's a fun fighting game for fans of the characters and is even played in high-level fighting tournaments. I would definitely recommend this game to Marvel fans, or anybody looking for a fun fighting game with a solid roster of characters. Number 9, the XMen Legends series. XMen Legends 1 and 2 released during the Xbox, PS2, GameCube era, and I really got some miles out of those games. Wolverine is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, if you can't tell by the t-shirt, and it was really great to take control of him and just really go crazy. This beat-em-up action RPG style of gameplay was fun, and it was great how over time your hero would get more powerful. I feel the developer did a great job giving each character a unique moveset to differentiate them from one another. It incentivized the player to swap around the members of your team to see who best fit your playstyle. X-Men Legends 2 is pretty cool in particular because you get to team up as the X-Men and Magneto and his group of villains. These games are a lot of fun, but they haven't aged the best. Number 8, the Walking Dead series. Moving away from Marvel, we have the emotional roller coaster that is the Walking Dead Telltale series. Telltale brought back the kind of point-and-click adventure game series in full force. Having access to a great IP like The Walking Dead gave them a wonderful pre-established world to build upon. The branching dialogue options, tense moments, and QuickTime events come together to tell a fantastic story that keeps you hooked season to season until the very end. Number 7, the Marvel Ultimate Alliance Trilogy. The successor to the X-Men Legends series opens up the playable roster beyond the X-Men. Now you can play as Spider-Man or any of your other favorite Avengers or other Marvel heroes. As a big fan of Spider-Man and Thor, I was happy to team them up together and bash my way through many of the famous Marvel locales. The amount of Easter eggs hidden in these games are almost innumerable. The developers did a great job making an accessible top-down beat-em-up for newcomers and comic book junkies alike. I prefer the story of Ultimate Alliance 2 as it focuses on the Civil War storyline from the comics, not the Marvel Cinematic Universe adaptation. Ultimate Alliance 3 was released after the massive successes of all of the Marvel movies, and you can tell there's a lot of influence taken from the films. Don't get me wrong, I love the MCU movies, but when you have a game that isn't a movie tie-in, it's nice to see it take a lot of freedom from the source material and not retread on the same ground that the movies did. Number 6, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Now let's jump all the way back to 1989. One of the most satisfying side-scrolling beat-em-ups of all time is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Being able to pick your favorite turtle and play with up to 3 friends to take down Shredder was an absolute blast. The sprite work is great and represents the characters perfectly. I also really enjoyed the short cutscenes and funny dialogue sprinkled throughout the game. You know, as a kid I really didn't mind feeding the machine quarter after quarter until I eventually beat it. Number 5. LEGO Marvel Superheroes. In my opinion, the LEGO games can be kinda hit or miss, but in the case of LEGO Marvel Superheroes, it was an absolute home run. The amount of unlockable characters is staggering. I know I mentioned the amount of Easter eggs in the Ultimate Alliance series, but LEGO Marvel Superheroes puts it to shame. I mean, you can play as Beta Ray Bill. I want to know what percentage of players actually know who he is. In general, the game plays like a typical licensed LEGO game. I like how each character had a specific ability for puzzle solving, like Captain America throwing his shield, Spiderman using his web to pull down an obstacle, and the Human Torch melting a wall. This is an excellent couch co-op game for players of all skill levels. There are other Marvel LEGO games out there, but this one was the first, and I really think it's the absolute best. Number 4. Injustice 2. 2 fighting games in the top 10? Yup. Injustice 2 has an engrossing story and really refined combat. It's made by NetherRealm, the guys who make Mortal Kombat, and it plays a lot like Mortal Kombat, but, you know, without all the gore. It also has a loot system where fighters collect gear as they level up. If you want a fair fight, you can turn off the effects of these items by playing ranked matches. A lot of the DC characters that I think are awesome are in this entry. Probably my favorite of which is Damian Wayne, Batman's son and eventual Robin. Although they've taken some liberties with his story, I'm glad he's featured in the game and have been enjoying maxing him out and trying to master his moveset. If you're looking for a satisfying fighting game, or if you've ever wondered if Catwoman could beat up Harley Quinn, I definitely recommend checking out Injustice 2. Number 3. Marvel's Spider-Man. This is the best Spider-Man game ever made, and not just one of the best action-adventure games on the PS4, it's one of the best of this console generation. Web-slinging through New York and chasing down iconic villains like the Rhino, Electro, and Kingpin is extremely satisfying. Insomniac Games did a great job translating the powers of Spider-Man from the comic panels to your controller. The main story of this game is solid and stands up with the great Peter Parker Spider-Man storylines, which is a tall order. When I wanted a break from the main campaign, I would swing around Manhattan to find collectibles and complete optional objectives. I can't think of a single reason why I wouldn't recommend this game to somebody unless they just hated fun. I'm looking forward to playing through this game again because, like I said at the beginning, I'm really hyped about this Miles Morales announcement. Number 2. The Batman Arkham series. What Spider-Man on the PS4 does for Spider-Man games, the Arkham series does for Batman games. We are treated to the voice talents of Mark Hamill as the Joker and Kevin Conroy as Batman, returning to their roles from the animated series and films, and introducing Troy Baker, who plays Joel in The Last of Us. In this series, the developers did a great job highlighting the detective aspect of Batman that sometimes gets overlooked. It was nice to have Batman investigating crime scenes and solving mysteries. I have a hard time choosing my favorite from these games. Most people like to go with Arkham City, which is hard to debate, but I have to say I actually really enjoyed Arkham Knight, and though some gameplay issues aside, the world was a blast to explore and the mystery of the Arkham Knight was a really engaging plot. And at number 1, we have The Wolf Among Us. Telltale Games returns on my list in the number 1 spot with The Wolf Among Us. They took the relatively unknown comic series Fables and translated it into the best video game based on a comic that I have ever played. The dark take on classic fairy tales mixed with a noir detective story keeps you engaged from start to finish, and leaves you wanting more. You play the role of Bigby Wolf, aka the Big Bad Wolf, who was constantly outrunning his bad reputation to try to solve the mystery of a murdered woman. Again, Telltale does a really great job with player choice, and your decisions really matter. At the end of a chapter, it shows you what the other players decided to do, and I always found that super interesting. Although Telltale Games recently went out of business, the announced Wolf Among Us 2 is probably going to get revived by another studio, but we have to wait and see. The first game left a lot of questions unanswered, and I've been itching to get back into that fantasy world. Well, that's my top 10, and I'm really curious to know, what are your favorite comic book video games? Let me know in the comments down below. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.